Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for April 1st, 2025, April Fool's Day. I'm going to be covering some stories which are not April Fools, but show how the establishment believes that they can use nonstop manipulation to turn the population into the kind of fools who will buy into the narratives that they're presenting. So let me first begin with a story about a Meshuggah who's doing everything in his power to drag Donald Trump into a war with Iran. For those who don't know, Meshuggah is a Yiddish word for someone who is a fool or crazy. So here are the opening paragraphs from a story in Haaretz, which is one of the leading circulation Israeli daily papers, on the story that emerged yesterday about Benjamin Netanyahu. And I'm going to be quoting from the story. Did you hear the one about the Prime Minister whose criminal corruption trial was interrupted so he could be summoned for questioning by police in an even more serious criminal case? Even the most imaginative scriptwriter would be challenged to conceive of an episode matching the pace of the dramatic events that unfolded in Israel on Monday. And the story continues. In the morning, Benjamin Netanyahu arrived at the Tel Aviv District Court for ongoing testimony in his trial, taking the stand to defend himself against charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. He was meant to have an especially long day of testimony to compensate for frequent cancellations due to so-called national security matters. But it turned out to be unusually short. Mid-testimony, the news broke that two of his aides, Eli Feldstein and Yonatan Ulrich, had been arrested on suspicion of contact with a foreign agent, accepting bribes, fraud, breach of trust, and money laundering in the unfolding affair known as Qatargate. Now, that's the end of the quotes from the story, but it gives you a sense of what's going on in Israel now. The story, Qatargate, which they ironically say rhymes with Watergate, includes confirmation that Netanyahu arranged with Qatar to provide $1 billion to Hamas to divide the Palestinians' loyalty between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. Yes, $1 billion from Netanyahu through Qatar to the same Hamas that he says he's now going to obliterate because of the effects of the October 7th attack. But wait, there's more. This is being investigated by the Shin Bet, whose leader, Ronan Bar, Netanyahu is trying to fire in order to stop the investigation. And when the Israeli Attorney General intervened and said Netanyahu lacks the authority to fire Bar, Netanyahu tried to fire the Attorney General. So the question then is, on this April Fool's Day, will Trump risk the danger of a devastating war with Iran in order to prove his loyalty to Benjamin Netanyahu and Zionism? Now, there's a second story, which is also extremely important, that was in last Sunday's New York Times on the, quote, secret history of the war in Ukraine, unquote. And it provides details of the U.S. direct involvement in the Ukraine war, which proves that Biden, Blinken, and others were lying to us. In other words, when they said this is not a proxy war of the United States and NATO against Russia, they were lying. Which confirms what we were saying, that the truth about the war was being hidden from us. And here I'm going to quote from Matt Taibbi, who is covering this story quite effectively. Taibbi writes, quote, sources not only make it clear that the public was lied to on a continuous basis from the outset of the conflict, but they describe how we were lied to, apparently thinking the methods are clever. Then he went on later to say, they risked our lives, that is Biden and Blinken, risked our lives and our children's lives knowingly, repeatedly, and for the worst possible reason, politics. They were afraid to admit a mistake. They planned individual excuses while letting bureaucratic inertia expand the conflict. Worse, as was guessed at on this site late last year, The Biden administration, after last November's election, increased the risk of global conflict by expanding the ops box to allow ATACMS and British Storm Shadow missiles to strike into Russia in order to shore up the Ukraine project, unquote. Now, this is not an April Fool's joke. The Biden administration put your life at risk to save his presidency, just as Netanyahu is risking the lives of the remaining hostages, the children of Gaza, the people of Israel, and ultimately your life by insisting on the U.S. support for a war with Iran. Now, there are other stories that continue in the same vein. The attempt to manipulate and control public opinion through lies and censorship. And I'll just reference a couple of them. A French court yesterday convicted Marine Le Pen to keep her from running for president. Now, this is the Romanian model. If you're going to lose the election, do something to prevent the candidate who's going to beat you from even being in the race. This was done in Romania by the European Union. The orders to the Romanian court to strike out the campaign of not allow the person who led the first round of elections to run for president. And the French elections in 2027 probably won't include Marine Le Pen now because her conviction excludes her from participating in French politics for 5 years. And what was she convicted of? Something which her party insists every party that has representatives in the European Union Parliament does, which is using European Union Parliament money for party benefits. Is it illegal? Well, it may be, but selective prosecution, of course. Here's another story that's hard to believe. Mark Carney, a World Economic Forum globalist greenie banker, is now campaigning as a nationalist to succeed him to win the prime minister's race after he took the place of the discredited Justin Trudeau. And how is he portraying himself as a nationalist? He's defending Canada against Donald Trump. So this is another one of these hard to believe stories. Will people fall for it? Well, according to the polls, they are falling for it. Then you have another story, the fraud of the German and European rearmament. To do what? To protect Europe from the coming invasion by Putin and Russia. In order to protect against a Russian attack, they're pledging hundreds of billions, if not trillions of euros for a defense buildup where they don't even have the means to produce the arms and the weapons, where the countries are heading toward bankruptcy, but they're going to increase the spending by taxing the population for a war which did not take place. Now, the polls are showing that in Germany, at least, people are not falling for this. Friedrich Merz, who is going to become the chancellor as soon as he can put together a coalition government, which is taking time because he's not very popular, he's falling in the polls precisely because people see him as betraying what he said when he ran for chancellor. Just as the Alternative for Deutschland's Peter Bistrom told me in an interview last Friday, which was posted as last Friday's update. So we're seeing politics turned upside down. There's not a single leader in the advanced sector who is free from the narrative that's being pumped out by the establishment of war, of the need for increased defense spending, higher taxes. This will mean higher inflation. But then who do they blame it on? Putin. Now, there's a solution to this. Just as on April Fool's Day, many people are suspicious of everything that is passed in front of them, it's time to expose the lies of the establishment. And not just expose them, but show what they're trying to stop. They're trying to stop you from joining our mobilization for a new security and development architecture to replace the collapsing unipolar order. And the American people were smart enough to dump the Biden team, including Kamala Harris, in last November's election. In Germany, the poll ratings for Merz keep dropping. He's down to 26% right now, the incoming chancellor. Macron was running very far behind Marine Le Pen, which is why they had to exclude her. So knowledge is power, but knowledge is only powerful if you use what you know to organize others. So I'd urge people to go to the LaRouche Organization website and sign up to receive notifications from my page of the daily update and articles I post. And then secondly, to subscribe to the Executive Intelligence Review Daily Report. We need an electorate that's not susceptible to lies and manipulation. In other words, you have to start doing your job. And I know many of you are. And we have a conference coming up. We have other activities you can be involved in. But we represent the alternative to this collapsing establishment. And we deserve your support for that and your co-participation.